Just wanted to tell you a little bit more about my canoe tent, or the River Bivy as I call it. I came up with this idea after, well, I've spent a lot of my life paddling and canoeing and kayaking around the world, and well, sometimes you finish a day in an area where you could be on a mud flat, so there's nowhere to pitch a tent. As I've been paddling around England more, sometimes there's places to pitch a tent, but they could be in like semi-urban areas and they can feel a little bit unsafe on a footpath or something. So I thought, well, if you could sleep in your canoe, you could always choose a safer place to sleep. I mean, you can drag the canoe onto the bank if you want, but if you wanted to stay away from the bank or on the offside of the river, away from people or the footpath, you could sleep in your canoe and you'd be safer. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's actually made out of a very expensive material. It's called Sunbrella Plus, which is what a lot of convertible roofs are made out of, and canal and riverboat annexes are made out of, cratch covers. The good thing about it is that it's designed to be out in the weather all the time. So it's UV resistant, it's waterproof but breathable, it's very hard wearing, it's got a nice sort of frontier feel about it. It's a canvas, so it feels very strong and robust, and I dare say it would last years and years and years. So yeah, but it might be a bit overkill because that material isn't cheap. It's priced here in the UK at about £24 a metre plus VAT. To cover a boat like this, which is almost 5 metres long, you're going to need at least 10 metres of material, maybe a little bit more. So let's say 11 metres of material. So yeah, it soon starts to add up. The option is, of course, is you make it out of cheaper material, and there are some options. Some run at about £8 a metre, and from what I've seen, they seem to be okay. They're not breathable, but they are waterproof and they are canvas. They just have a PVC backing on them, so they won't be quite as breathable, and I don't think they have as much UV resistance. Bearing in mind that these sort of tent things aren't going to be out in the weather all the time. They're just going to be taken out on an expedition and used for a period of time and then packed up and put away. So they probably don't need that much resistance from the sun. But this one, like I said, it's kind of high end, so it's probably a bit overkill. As I said, it's meant for an expedition type canoe. My canoe is very wide, which means it's not very fast, but it can carry an awful lot of gear, and it's very stable. So that's what it's meant for. If you were to fit this cover to a more streamlined, faster canoe, I'm not sure how practical it would be. The seats and the yoke inside my canoe, I've fixed them with wing nuts, so that when you set the tent up, you can basically take the seats out and take the yoke out, and leaves all that space for you to sleep in. And then it's pretty much like any other tent. You can lay down your thermarest and your sleeping bag on top, and you're good to go. The components to make this tent, minus the material, because that will depend on what sort of material you want, but the components alone, retail price off of Amazon for the tent poles and the zips and the mosquito netting run at about £230, bearing in mind that the zips alone are £60. That's for 5 metres of zips. Very heavy duty. I went with the best I could get. They're the same sort of zips that you would get on a barge, cratch cover. So very durable, but they are expensive. So you know, you could cut costs and go a bit cheaper. But yeah, basically the materials minus the fabric is about £230. Then the fabric on top, well, if you went with something cheaper, it could be about £60–70 worth of material, and if you go with this stuff, it probably run up about £300 worth of material. As you can see, there's air vents in there. All the seams have been seam sealed afterwards, so it's completely waterproof. It's basically like a high-end expedition type tent. It's not lightweight. I didn't want that lightweight nylon feel to it that flaps around in the wind. I wanted something that felt more like a traditional canvas. So that's why I went with this heavy sort of material. The poles inside, I went with telescopic poles at either end. I figured that maybe as time went by, if the fabric did stretch, you could then extend those poles and keep the whole thing taut and tight. But as you saw when I was setting it up, I did also add these thin aluminium dome tent type poles on to brace the sides, just to keep everything taut and tight, because I basically want it to be able to withstand, you know, pretty much gale force winds. It's very, very tough. So yeah, if you're interested in something like this, this is the kind of a prototype. But if you're interested in something like this, let's say it's probably more for your serious canoeist adventurer. Obviously, it'd be nice just to have for the weekend here and then, but it's probably more designed at someone who's going to, at that sort of price, at someone who's going to do a lot of sort of expedition type long distance canoeing. Bearing in mind, a canoe like this probably costs you £1,500. So the fact that a tent to go on top is going to run you, I reckon I could charge £400 worth of labour. I think I could make one within a week. So yeah, with this sort of material, you're probably looking at more closer to like £900. But with a cheaper sort of material, I could probably do the whole thing for about $650. That's pretty much it. If you're interested, contact me, hit me up, and I'll be happy to help you out.